we are going to get into our Let Them segment. And this is one of those topics I think we're going to be revisiting quite a bit, which is this sort of health and wellness and self-help stuff that is really primarily marketed to women, often by women. And the latest self-help guru to captivate the nation is a woman who, before landing on this, a theory that she calls the Let Them theory, which I think is ridiculous, and we will discuss why. She had like 19 failed ventures. She somehow wound up in $800,000 worth of debt. She never tells us how or why. I would love to know how one gets into $800,000 worth of debt. But now she thinks she's the one we should all be going to for advice. And guess who else has fallen for it? None other than your and my favorite person, Oprah Winfrey. Take a look.
Let them is when you release control.
Oh my goodness, it's so freeing.
Yes.
Yes.
You don't actually think about what other people think when you're proud of yourself because you know the truth.
That is so powerful.
Other people never block your way. Only you can do that.
Bing, 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 bing. Wow, that is so true.
Is Oprah even present for this conversation? I feel like that's like the replicant Oprah, where you push a button and you get one of her patented responses like, oh, wow, or that's so true. Like, is it, other people never stand in your way? Yes, they do. Of course they do. We've all had people stand in our way. You don't worry about what other people think when you're proud of yourself? Of course you do. What is this garbage? So, okay, this book, like, I think this book sold like a slew of copies before it was even published. Like, it was like on the New York Times bestseller list for weeks and weeks, if it not still is. First, I want to show you guys this author photo, because this author photo is like to die. Okay, look at this woman. Look at her she's looking up as if she's like a beatified saint, and all she's spreading is joy and knowledge, and she's blessing us all. So that's red flag number one. Number two, the Let Them theory. She's claiming initially that she had coined this. It's been around forever. Her origin story is that she thought this was a great idea when her daughter, Sawyer, who figures prominently in this story, told her to stop nagging one of the kids in the house about doing something. She just said, geez, Mom, let him do it. And that was, oh, eureka, a movement is born. Okay. Sawyer also co-wrote the book with her mom. Whose name is on the cover? It ain't Sawyer's. It's Mel's. Now, in Mel's theory, I'm supposing her daughter should have just let her get away with that. But apparently the newer editions of the book do have Sawyer's name on the book jacket. Sawyer, get a good lawyer. Start now, start early, start young. Okay. So I'm going to read you sort of samples from the Let Them theory, which is full of garbage. Chapter 2 is called Getting Started, Let Them and Let Me. And in this chapter, Mel Robbins shares a story that many people can relate to. I think it's happened to everybody, where she's harmlessly scrolling through social media one night, comes across photos of her friend group, realizes they're all on vacation without her. And they look amazing. They look like they're having the greatest time. And she is extremely wounded. Now, if you're going to be any kind of self-help guru, I think you need to first acknowledge to your audience that social media is a lie, that most people are putting a highly edited and curated version of themselves out on social media. And if you believe that, you're a moron. And I think that Mel Robbins is kind of a moron because she believes it. And then she goes on to say, I hadn't really spent time with them as a group in a long, long time. I hadn't invested in those individual friendships, and I hadn't planned anything fun or reached out to them recently either. So these people are probably so fed up with Mel Robbins, who can probably talk only about herself, her marketing team, the multiple platforms she's building out, how she's become this like incredible figure that everybody just wants to go to for advice. I mean, I'm sure like presidents and prime ministers call her regularly. And they were probably like, let's just ditch her. She's not really great. And she lacks kind of the self-awareness to be like, maybe I'm the asshole. So anyway, moving on, again, this entire book, the premise is let them. And the premise is that if a friend group leaves you out of something and you're very hurt, let them. If your boyfriend is kind of being a jerk to you, let him. If your boss refuses to give you that promotion or that raise that you know you deserve, let him. The idea that this is a blanket policy that is applicable to any and every conflict in your life is so moronic. I'm sorry to use that word again, but it's so truly profoundly dumb. Like, for one thing, I think that anger abides for a reason in the human race. I think it's an evolutionary adaptation. I think in the right moments, in the right doses, it can actually be healthy. It can alert you to something or someone who is not quite right. This Buddhist idea that she's sort of like repackaging and shilling, that the only way to happiness is to somehow find a way within yourself to eradicate hurt feelings, betrayals, anything that basically upsets you and is motivating you to look for change. I don't subscribe to it. I don't actually subscribe to that Buddhist theory that like wants and desires are actually the root of all human misery. I think wants and desires, again, if you view them through the right lens, can be a very life-affirming thing. I mean, could you imagine hitting a plateau in life where you're like, done it all, seen it all, I have no goals, I have no ambitions, I've reached this plane of otherworldly existence where I don't desire anything. And by the way, this is going to loop into our future conversation about Ozempic, because that's one of the side effects that the drug companies don't really tell you about. Chapter, what is this, 8 in a book that is just way too long. This is the title, which I love. So she goes, "The right decision often feels wrong," to which I wrote in my notes, does it? I don't think it does. I mean, we all have anxiety. There's good anxiety, there's bad anxiety, but I think this is a very strange idea to be putting forth to a bunch of people who follow you and believe that you do have some kind of access to wisdom that they do not. And by the way, Mel Robbins has no training in psychology, in sociology, in human behavior. She doesn't know anything more than you and I do, okay? So listen to the banality, the platitudes she's positing in this book that, by the way, she's charging $29.99 for hardcover. And she's on tour right now, by the way. She's hitting New York City in a few weeks. I might go. The lowest ticket, $500. Biggest ticket, $1,500. If I'm paying $1,500 to see somebody speak, it better be Jesus Christ himself coming down from heaven. Okay, here we go. Mel Robbins, The Wit and Wisdom. The fact is, every human being is dealt a different hand in life. You don't say. Secondly, it's not about the hand you've been dealt. It's how you play it. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Here she goes. It's true. A lot of people have been dealt a, quote, luckier or, quote, more successful hand of cards. Let them. You will never be able to move forward in life, she says. I'm paraphrasing here now, I'm quoting. If you give all of your power to this stupid and toxic habit of comparing yourself to other people, stop it now. After we finish this part of the book by saying some people are just really lucky, again, are you kidding me? Why am I spending money? Why am I spending my time reading this book? I have to say, when you see somebody who has something you want, it could be a material thing, it could be a quality they have, it could be sort of an ineffable thing they've got. The way I tend to look at stuff like that is that's alerting me that there is something I maybe would like to have or develop that I hadn't been in tune with before. And that's a nice little nudge to see what I can do to make my life a little bit happier. That is a much more healthy way, I think, to frame it. Now, before we move on, I just have to say, this woman who also had she had a failed talk show in 2019. And you don't really see this in her algorithm or her Instagram, which, by the way, she prefers to show us photos of, and I weep for humanity, truly. These are images of women who have tattooed "Let Them" on their bodies because I guess it's too difficult to remember. It's the equivalent of like somebody who has a tattoo that says "breathe." It's an involuntary reaction. It keeps you going. You don't have to think about it. Why do you have to tattoo it on your body? So anyway, she had this failed talk show. We never really talk about the show. And in it was in 2019, and she again posited herself as somebody who was going to be America's shrink and help us with, anyone who couldn't afford, let's say, a shrink. She was going to be your therapist on television. Now, I'm just going to read you some sample talk show titles. Men Being Catfished, The Mel Robbins Show. I Killed My Ex in Self-Defense, The Mel Robbins Show. Confronting the Father I Never Knew I Had, okay, this is Jerry Springer. This is not high-end self-help. So I'm circling back now to Sawyer, the daughter, who worked on this book. Mel expresses a lot of anger towards Sawyer. And she I think my interpretation is she knifes her a little bit in this book. And I don't quite understand why, but I am loving the lack of self-awareness here on display. So she is talking about, she talks about being horrible, a horrible person. She literally writes the words, "I was a complete bitch." You know what happened? She had 3 couples in a friend group with her and her husband, and the other 3 couples split off and formed their own friend group and expelled Mel and Chris. So I think we're getting an indication that Mel can be kind of difficult interpersonally. And she starts talking about like her kids in this book, and in ways that I think did her kids sign off on this? Were they okay? So Sawyer, I see you, I acknowledge you, and I think we're all with you. This is Mel. I have watched our oldest daughter, Sawyer, engage in this type of comparison and torture herself for years. She is hyper fixated on her younger sister, Kendall, who has a completely different body type, bone structure, metabolism, and athletic abilities. To top it off, Kendall was born with an amazing singing voice and perfect pitch. Sawyer cannot change this. Holy crap. Okay, we go on. I've watched with so much sadness in my heart, in my we're going to do a segment on difficult mothers, trust me. I've watched with so much sadness in my heart at how miserable Sawyer makes herself. Dear Lord, and I can't save her. What, the great Mel Robbins can't save her own daughter? I thought you had all the answers. What's going on over there in Casa Robbins? Going on to quote, I can't stop her from engaging in this kind of comparison. And no amount of complimenting or reassurance is going to change her behavior. She must choose to change this for herself. Oh my God. I feel like she is very, very antagonistic towards this daughter who must possess qualities that Mel just burns up with envy over. Here she acknowledges Sawyer in the back of the book. Sawyer, my brilliant daughter, co-conspirator, co-researcher, co-writer, and co-pilot. Again, name is not on the book. You swore you would never, in all caps, work for your mother. And here we are. Well, here we all are. And I think we can conclude safely that Mel Robbins really deserves none of your time, none of your money, and let her implement this theory in her own house with her own family, where I truly do believe some stuff needs attending to. Love you, Sawyer.